Hi everyone. This video is going to give you a little extra help with Project 1 if you're still having difficulty with the questions about an individual, questions about groups, or questions about culture. So I am going to show you 3 advertisements and we're going to talk about these advertisements and break them up into these different categories. I am doing basic overview. I'm not getting super in depth, and even the example questions I provide, they're just very basic. I just want you to be able to get a good idea of what's needed for this assignment. So when we look at this ad, we can clearly see 2 individuals. We see that there is a woman and that there is a man. So when asking a question about an individual for this, we could ask a question about the woman, or we could ask a question about the man. So for example, the most common question I get with this advertisement is, why does the woman not seem to age? So that is a question about an individual in the advertisement. Now, as we look at this, we can notice that there's groups represented, whether it be that it's the married couple, because they would be a group. We could also ask questions about men, and we could also ask questions about women. So one very simple question to ask, is the couple happy? You're asking about a group in the ad, and you're asking a social science question about them. So now let's talk about culture. And again, I'm just scratching the surface with culture. So for this, we do have the culture of women and men. If you notice, there's a Christmas tree in the background of this one. So we could talk about the culture of people who celebrate Christmas. We could talk about the culture of people who drive. There's a car in the background of that one. It's implied that she's using this cream. So we could even ask about the culture of people who use a face cream. And if you look at the overall advertisement, you notice that there are pictures sitting on a table. So we could even ask questions about the culture of people who put pictures up in their home. So an example of a question we could ask is, do people who put pictures up in their home do it for themselves or for others to see the pictures? So those would all be questions that would fit into those categories. So now I want to talk to you about a few questions not to use for this ad. First one, does the cream work? Well, the cream is a product and it's not a human in the ad. You would not be asking about an individual or a group or a culture. You'd be asking about a product. So that question does not fit into the categories. Another thing, the question, what culture do you see? That shouldn't be used for any of the advertisements because the goal is for you to be looking at culture and for you to be asking about a question about the culture that you are seeing. So we're going to move on and go to a second ad, and we're going to take a look at this one. So when it comes to questions about an individual, we've got some options. We could ask questions about this man, or this woman. So we could, for example, ask, why is there a woman in the men's room? Then we'd be asking a question about her. For group, we could ask a question about all 3 of these people together. We could be asking questions about women. We could be asking questions about men. We could even ask questions about people who use a bathroom. If you notice the way they're dressed and the way they're behaving in the ad, they appear to be crime scene investigators. So we could even ask a question about crime scene investigators. So one question that I've seen come up a lot in this is, why are these people investigating a urinal? So that could be a question you could ask about groups and group behavior. So now let's take a second and think about the cultures that we see. Again, we've got men and women. We've got crime scene investigators. That's a culture. We also notice they're all wearing clean suits. So we could ask a question about people who wear clean suits. So I had a student who was a fireman, and he had actually, kind of joked that he feels naked when he's not in his full fire uniform. So he actually asked what I thought was a really good question. Do people who need to wear clean suits for work feel naked without them? You're asking about their behavior. So now let's talk about a couple questions not to ask and why not to ask them. So asking, what kind of camera is that? Well, you're asking about the camera. You're not asking about an individual, a single person. You're not asking about a group of people. And you're not asking about a culture. You're asking about an inanimate object. And so that question would not be acceptable in any of the top 3 sections. Another question would be, where is the bathroom? Setting is not important in these questions. Talking about where things are taking place is not quite as important. You need to be focused on the things a social scientist would look at. When you ask about culture, you're asking about the behaviors of the culture, not just where is this. Another thing to be aware of is asking questions about biology. So, for example, why does this man have gray hair? Well, that's a question about biology. If you wanted to ask why hasn't he colored his gray hair, then you'd be asking about him. Why has the man chosen not to color his gray hair? Then you would be asking a question about an individual. But remember, it's about social sciences, not about biology. Another thing is, if you ask questions like, why did they cast a blonde? Or why did they hire a blonde woman? You're asking questions about casting and marketing choices as opposed to actually asking about her or about, the things taking place within the ad. You're talking about something external to the ad. So remember to keep your focus on what you are seeing within this ad. All right, let's move on to the third ad. So in case you haven't seen this ad before, it's got the woman and it says, I could have married an astronaut. You deserve a decent sandwich. So right off the bat, questions about an individual is really easy because we just have the woman. So based on what you read at the bottom, you might ask, who did the woman marry? She could have married an astronaut. Well, who did she marry? Or you could ask, did the woman get married? So when it comes to groups, a lot of people look at this and say, there are no groups represented. It's just one woman. But there actually are groups represented. For example, women. You could even ask questions about people who wear glasses. Knowing it's a sandwich ad and they're talking about, she deserves a decent sandwich, you could even ask questions about people who eat sandwiches. If you take the assumption that she did get married, she married someone besides the astronaut, then you could ask a question about a married person, or married people rather. So one question that I received a couple terms ago, do all married people have moments of regret? Because it appears that she is regretting the fact that she didn't marry the astronaut. So that was a question about groups that I was asked. So now when it comes to culture, we can talk about women, older women, sandwich eaters, people who are unhappy in their marriage. So there's lots of different cultures we can get from this ad. So an example of a question I've received in the past, do all older women who wear glasses put a chain on them? That's a question about culture. So a few things not to ask with this ad. Why aren't there any groups shown? Well, in actuality, there are, and that would not be a valid question anyway. And another one, what kinds of sandwiches do they make? That's not a question about a group or an individual or a culture in the ad. So I really hope this video has been helpful for you to look at this and get a kind of a breakdown. If you have any questions, please let me know. I just hope this supplemental information has been helpful. Thanks so much for watching.